Hi everyone, hello on this Sunday. Bear with me for a second while I get set up over here. While I'm doing that, how about everyone? Please feel free to tell me what you've been up to in the last week. How have you been? And yeah, let me know where you're tuning in from, because like I often say, Facebook isn't exactly fantastic when it comes to being bug free, so it doesn't always show up and tell me exactly who's watching and where you guys are watching from. So yeah, nice to see you all here this morning. We've had a very, very busy week this week. Oh, good morning, David. So nice to see you. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you had a good session with JP this morning. Yeah, it was nice to meet you again during the Parinirvana commemorative event. So I won't say, good morning, Pastor Shin. Hi. Good morning, King Hoi. How are you saying? Thank you guys so much also for volunteering this week to help us with the preparations for the event that was to commemorate the first anniversary of our Guru's Parinirvana. Yeah, so that happened this week on Friday. And then we had Ulam Bana on Saturday. So basically on Sunday, everyone pretty much passed out from a very, very busy week. But yeah, it was very nice to see everyone, and very nice to see so many Kecharans and so many friends and people come together to volunteer to help us to properly honor and celebrate the life of our teacher. And on Friday, if you guys are not aware, and if you weren't here, you're tuning in from somewhere else, good morning, Yo Miao Ki. Thank you for joining me this morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. But if you guys are tuning in from somewhere else and you weren't able to actually make the Parinirvana event, just to let you know, the day started at 10 in the morning. Well, that was the first puja. That was Rabne to bless and consecrate the indoor relic stupa, which is now in Sem Ladrang. So that was followed by a 1,000 offering Lama Chirpa at 3 p.m. And it took 24 hours to prepare for that puja. There were like 94 volunteers the day before. So there were a lot of people setting up and then resetting up the offerings and the altar in Wisdom Hall. And then that was followed by a Doji Shukden Kangso in the evening. That was our monthly Doji Shukden Kangso. So yeah, a day filled with prayer and opportunity for people to come and connect also with, and to have audience with Rinpoche in Sem Ladrang. And at the Indoor Relic Stupa. Alright, so before we get started today, we're going to wait for a couple more people to tune in. Oh, got some news. David, you might like to hear this one. I'm going to hit my 2,000 kilometer target for cycling. I'm going to hit it like 6 months early, so I'm very pleased about that. That is happening sometime this week. Before today's talk, I actually went for a quick ride because I had to make up for to meet my target for this week. So that's done. By the way, if there are technical difficulties, please let me know, because I keep seeing myself freezing on my computer and I can't really tell if you can hear me or you can't hear me, you can see me and all that. Alright, so yeah, let me know if you guys are having technical difficulties and I'll try and sort it out. Gosh, I'm so not a fan of this the new Facebook. So confusing. Alright, so before we get started on today's sharing, I'm going to do a short prayer as usual to ascribe the source of the knowledge and information that will be shared today. And if you guys are regulars, then you will know this prayer as well. Thanks, you Sing. I'm waiting to ride with you. Good morning, Sukwan. Thank you so much for volunteering in the hot drinks and food refreshment tent and canopy over the last 2 or 3 days. So yeah, before we get started on today's topic, then I'm going to do a short prayer to ascribe the source of the information and the knowledge that's going to be shared today. Alright, so I go for refuge in my Lama, from whom I've received these teachings. I go for refuge in the lineage Lamas, from whom my Lama has received these teachings. Alright, so, oh gosh, David, yeah, Singapore to Bangkok, yeah, or all around Peninsular Malaysia. Okay, so last week I spoke about dealing with insecurities, and I talked about where insecurities arise from, how insecurities impact our spiritual practice and our spiritual progress, and what we can do to effectively deal with our insecurities. And so, as part of my talk last week, which I want to revisit, is that I shared about the importance of relying on and on having a teacher, and why it's normal to have a teacher or spiritual guide rather in this instance, and why it's normal to rely on the opinion of our teacher and on the guidance and advice of our teacher, who basically is an expert of the mind. Because I mean, on a day-to-day basis, you know, in daily life, we rely on the opinions and on the knowledge and conclusions of experts all the time, right? And it's completely normal for us to seek another opinion about our physical health, so why not about our spiritual and mental well-being as well? So I also talked about why relying on a teacher is not a matter of blind faith or slavery, but that it has real and tangible practical benefits and applications to our everyday life. So let's not talk about Tantra, because most of us are not at that stage yet, but we can talk about the benefits of relying on a teacher and what kind of impact that has on our everyday life as beings in samsara, and how devotion to a teacher can even help us to overcome our insecurities, because the teacher sees our potential and the teacher sees what we're capable of and not what or who we are now. All right. So during my talk last week, during my sharing last week, someone actually asked, how can different sects, sects, coexist and practice together? And what I wanted to do was share the answer with you guys, because just in case you didn't read the comment section, because I know some people don't, because there might be something in the answer that some of you may find useful. And this question of how different sects, sects, can coexist and practice together is actually quite frequently asked. I mean, I was in a public event somewhere in California at some point, and that was one of the questions somebody asked me. So, I mean, it's something that, you know, is raised quite a lot. And I think it's because most people get confused, and their immediate impression is that there is a difference between the different traditions and the different schools and lineages. And I can understand how they might conclude in that manner. Because when you basically first get into Buddhism, for many of us at least, we're not just dealing with, you know, a new body of knowledge or a new set of information that changes the way that we look at the world. It changes the way that we think, and changes our attitude towards one that's guided by kindness and guided by wisdom. All right, so for many of us, when we get into Buddhism, we're also dealing with an entirely new foreign culture. And we're dealing with a different way of doing things that's completely unfamiliar to us. And we're dealing with people, and we're dealing with human beings, and we're dealing with a whole new community. So I can understand how it may be confusing to some people that there appears to be differences between the different traditions, and therefore how can it possibly be that the different traditions can coexist and practice together. So yeah, obviously it is confusing, but because people think, you know, which part is culture and which part is about practice. All right, so there will also be people that you come across, and I have come across these people who will tell you that their tradition is the best, that my lineage is the only one, that my school is the only right way, and it's the best way, and all the other schools are not as good as mine. All right, so you will, I mean, chances are you will come across people like that. And when you're new to Buddhism and you're faced with someone saying that, but it doesn't happen to be the tradition that you connected with, I can understand how uncertainty might arise in your mind, and you might think that, well, is my tradition really the best tradition? All right, so that's why I wanted to share my answer to this person's question, to hopefully alleviate some of the concern and worry that some people may have, or that they may have faced in the past, as well as share with you guys a potential answer that you might be able to use with respect and with kindness when you are dealing with someone who also opts to criticize or maybe say some unkind things about your tradition. So what I wrote to that person who asked the question was that there is no difference between the various sects, only that they emphasize different aspects of the path. It's to match the karmic affinity of the people who connect with that particular tradition, lineage, or practice. But if you look beneath the manifested differences, you'll see that in essence they are the same, and they reference the same mechanics and the same methods. Hence, there's no actual reason why they can't coexist. It's like saying, I like this analogy, it's like saying that raspberry jam can't be put on a table next to strawberry jam. Both are jams, both are very tasty on toast. You can tell that I wrote this when I was hungry, okay? So both are jams, both are tasty on toast, and both deliver vitamin C. But one person may find strawberry jam more agreeable to their palate than raspberry, like how some people may have karmic affinity to a particular tradition over others, right? So then mixing strawberry and raspberry jam might leave your palate confused. Hence why we're encouraged not to mix traditions, because the mind at our level can't discern and will be easily confused. But a super taster who has a refined palate, like a practitioner who's actually attained, will be able to spot the differences between strawberry and raspberry and still be able to appreciate the merits of both without conflict. So it's humans who want to claim superiority, it's humans who want to claim differences, and so on, all right? So there's actually no real reason why different traditions can't coexist, because all traditions can trace their origins and trace the lineage of their teachings all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni. So how can they contradict? How can they fail to coexist when they all arise from the same source? All right? So I hope that clears things up a little bit. Good morning, Penny. Thank you for joining us this morning. But yeah, I hope that clears things up a little bit. And before I get into the actual topic for today, backend producer screen still hasn't loaded, never mind. But before I get into the actual topic for things today, I want to say thank you to the sponsors of today's talk, who would like to dedicate their sponsorship to, well, the first sponsor was anonymous and would like to dedicate their sponsorship to all sentient beings. The second sponsor was also anonymous. I don't know why you guys are sponsoring anonymously, but thank you very much for your support. The second sponsor was also anonymous, and they would like to dedicate their contribution to may all beings find lasting inner peace and happiness. May all become kind, wise, and have unwavering determination to benefit all sentient beings. And the third sponsor was Jacqueline Ong Lu Yi, thank you, who accompanied their contribution with the dedication that may all be blessed with great health and success and continue to benefit from Dharma sharing. So thank you guys so much for your continued support of these online programs and for your contributions. And if you would like to sponsor a talk, you guys know what to do. There is a link in the description section of this video. So please click on it, because like I said, for 16 weeks, your support helps us to continue making these online programs available, all right? So this week, what am I going to talk about? This week, I am going to talk about competitiveness. But before I do that, I'll take a drink of water. Right. I see, right? Puja all day on Friday, followed by, I can't remember what I was doing on Saturday, but like absolutely lost my voice yesterday. Good morning, Ian Kok Ng. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name, but thank you for joining us this morning. All right, so yeah, I lost my voice over the weekend. I'm glad it came back. Now, so today I'm going to talk about competitiveness and what is competitiveness. And the reason why I bring this up is because I know that competitiveness is something that all of us face every single day. Whether it's competitiveness with other people or competitiveness even with ourselves. All right, so either way, competitiveness as a approach arises from the same source and has the same result, whether it's with ourselves or with other people. And the reason why I bring this up is because I'm a very competitive person. Usually with myself, I like to set targets and I like to set goals, and I like to actually beat them, especially numbers. So that's why, I guess that's why cycling works for me. But anyway, yeah, so what is the source of competitiveness? If we're going to talk about it, where does it come from? Competitiveness, I guess as some of you may have already ascertained, arises from desire. So competitiveness and the source of competitiveness is actually desire. And as you guys know, Buddha Shakyamuni taught that desire is the root of all our suffering. So how does desire manifest and translate into competitiveness? It is the wish to gain, it is the wish to accumulate, it is the wish to possess, it's the wish to own, it's the desire and the wish to accomplish or achieve something. All right, and the thing about competitiveness is that it's done with the desire to accomplish all of this or to do all of this at the cost or at the downfall of somebody else. All right, so is competitiveness bad? Because you guys might be thinking, well, you know what, if I'm not competitive, then how will I ever do well in business? How will I ever do well in school? How will I ever do well in sports and so on? So some people may actually think of competition and competitiveness as being something good. Because how can you be successful, let's say secularly, without any competitive spirit? Because from a spiritual perspective, there's no element of competitiveness, which I will explain or I will elaborate upon more later. All right, so people may be thinking, well, if I'm not competitive, how is it possible for me to succeed in a secular environment? What I want to explain is that may be fine, that approach may be okay for now, all right? But we need to also ask ourselves, at what point does it end? At what point is it enough? At what point is enough, all right? At what point do we find that we've reached the pinnacle and we are satisfied and that there's nothing more to achieve? So desire is kind of like trying to quench our desire by adding more desire into it, and by being competitive is like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. You keep drinking water, but it never seems to actually make that desire go away. So the problem is that whilst competitiveness may be good in certain circumstances in the short term, ultimately we don't know how to make it end. We don't know how to end that desire. We only know how to go forward, and we only know how to continue to cling to more and more and more result. So it gets to a stage where it's never enough competing and it's never enough fighting for us. And if you think about it, not even about things in terms of the lifespan of a human being, which is 80 years, but you think about things in terms of multiple, countless lifetimes, both previous and future. Imagine being competitive for aeons, and being driven by desire for aeons, and always feeling like you never have enough and you never accomplished enough. It's pretty tiring. And if you guys are familiar with the story of Buddha Shakyamuni, and you're familiar with the story about his relationship with his cousin Devadatta, Devadatta was constantly trying to outdo Buddha Shakyamuni. And I mean, the thing is, because he's Buddha, Devadatta could never beat Prince Siddhartha, right? So he could never beat him in horse riding competitions, in shooting arrows. You know, Siddhartha always got the girls were like falling all over Siddhartha, but it was never Devadatta. And Devadatta was constantly trying to compete with Prince Siddhartha, who became Buddha Shakyamuni, and Devadatta could never win. And what was the result? Devadatta got angry. Devadatta was very, very jealous. He never had a moment's peace or a moment's rest, because whatever it is that he had, despite being royalty himself, he was never able to fully enjoy it because it was never enough for him. All right, so competition, when we don't know how to end it, and competitiveness, when we don't know how to end it, because it's driven by desire, can lead to us just being extremely tired. Because you spend so much mental energy and so much mental effort occupying your mind with thinking, I don't have enough and I need to get more. So, good morning, Christine, and good morning, Xiao Li Chong. Thank you guys so much for joining us this morning. If we want to have elements of competitiveness in our life, it's important for us to separate healthy competition from unhealthy competition. All right, so as long as everyone strives for a high standard, or as long as everyone strives for something better, or quote-unquote perfection, without intentionally hurting your competitors, and with being okay, being a good loser, then it's fine for now. All right, but the thing is, the issue is not actually competitiveness in and of itself, but clinging to a particular desired outcome and doing everything to accomplish that outcome at the cost of other people's welfare and at the cost of other people's well-being. And so if competitiveness and competition, spills over. Morning, Crystal. Hope you and Jeffrey got enough rest. So if competition spills over and compels us to engage in non-virtuous actions because our competitiveness is being driven by self-gain and self-benefit, then it becomes unhealthy competition, all right? So if you have a competitive nature, if you have a competitive spirit, and you want to produce the best of something, or you want to be the best at something, but you learn to be, you are not clinging to a specific outcome, and hence you're not disappointed if you don't accomplish that specific outcome. Then competition is healthy. It could be healthy, all right? But when it spills over and our competitive spirit becomes the reason why we're deceptive, becomes the reason why we are cruel to other people and we put them down, then that's when competition becomes unhealthy. So for example, you know what, I'll just give you guys a super straightforward example. For example, if you have children running in a race, and one of the children, one kid, trips up another competitor, that's not healthy, right? Because you want to win at the cost of somebody else. On the flip side, in contrast, you guys read stories about athletes and sports people online about how they are running, let's say, ultra marathons or whatever, and they have a shot at winning, or maybe they are second, and then they see the person who's actually in the lead trip and fall. Don't you have so much more respect for the athlete who goes to help their competitor cross the finish line at the cost of their own victory? So competition, when it compels us to act in a way that is non-virtuous, becomes unhealthy. All right? So, good morning, Joyce. Hello. So yeah, what are the consequences of competitiveness? Unhealthy competition, all right? When we are constantly competitive, it's a constant reinforcement of dissatisfaction with our situation, with our life, with our performance, with our accomplishments, our achievements, and so on. All right? And dissatisfaction is actually one of the characteristics of suffering that Buddha Shakyamuni talked about. So Buddha Shakyamuni actually talked about 3 kinds of suffering, the third of which is actually all-pervasive suffering. And that all-pervasive suffering is characterized by ever-present insecurity over our situation. So competition is us, if we are forever competitive, always trying to compete with other people, even with ourselves, we are constantly reinforcing our sense of dissatisfaction with everything around us. Now, if you think about that, can you imagine going through life never being satisfied with anything? Can you imagine going through life never being satisfied with any of your accomplishments? Nothing is ever good enough. And when you get to a stage or you get to a point where nothing is ever good enough, or that everything is never good enough, you always want more. And as a result of that, you also cannot enjoy what you actually have. Even when it comes to psychology, I read in passing about a psychological study the other day, and they were talking about how money, can money buy happiness, right? That question. And there's a joke that's going around that's, I mean, you guys may be familiar with it, but there's a joke that says, people who say that money can't buy happiness don't know where to shop. So this psychological study was examining that question, can money buy happiness? And what that study found is that up to a certain point, I think it was $150,000 or something per year, up to a certain point, beyond that, up to a certain point, money can buy some sense of security and some sense of happiness, but beyond that, it has no direct correlation with your sense of self-worth or your sense of security or your sense of quote-unquote identity, right? So up beyond a certain point, money does not have a direct relationship with how happy and how secure you feel. So then why do people keep gunning for bigger salary, bigger returns, and so on? Because they don't know when to stop, because there's a underlying current of dissatisfaction with what they've accomplished, but in most cases, many people don't know how to address it. All right. So competition, how else can competition, what other consequences are there of our competition or being forever competitive? It reinforces your perception of someone as your enemy, because if you are competitive, you've got to have somebody to compete against, right? So competition is based on our view of someone as our enemy or someone who should be beaten. And the problem with that is that our view of other people is seldom objective and it's seldom accurate. In fact, even our view of ourselves is seldom accurate and seldom objective. And that's why I talked in previous weeks about the importance of having a teacher, because our teacher is the one who does have that objective or more accurate view of us. All right. So the problem with creating enemies is that it reinforces this situation of us and them, and this view of us and them, and this separation is based on our view of other people, which is not accurate and not objective, and it tends to be a projection of our own preferences, our own likes and dislikes, and our own biases or biases. Right. So as sentient beings, as humans, we already have a tendency to separate and to categorize sentient beings, human beings. And the reason why we do this is because our life and our world and our thinking is very messy. And so we separate and we categorize people into different little groups to try and help us to organize and to navigate the messiness of our life. And this isn't just something that was explained by Buddha Shakyamuni, but as I shared in previous weeks, again, research has found that our brain has a tendency to do that. So our brain has a tendency to look for patterns to help us to organize things so that we can navigate our life more efficiently. But the problem with doing that is that our conclusions are not always accurate because we fill in the blanks. All right, we fill in the blanks about what's happening around us. So what we perceive and what we view is not what reality is. So the problem, once we actually categorize or organize everyone into different categories, is that we may be unwilling to look beyond the labels. And I'm going to explain why this is problematic. All right. What kind of categories do we often come up with? The most common category is the category of, well, if this person agrees with me, they're in my group. If this person is close to me, they're in my group. If this person can do something for me, they're part of my group. If this person matches my views, if this person shares the same opinions as me, they're part of my group. And everyone else is others. You put them in a group called the others, right? Why do we do that? Because when we surround ourselves with people who match what it is that we think, and they agree with us, it boosts our feeling of self-worth. It boosts our feeling of self-righteousness. When our family or when our close circle becomes the standard, or becomes, in our minds, they are considered desirable or correct. And so everyone else becomes considered inferior or incorrect. When you do that, the problem with doing that is that you basically guarantee that you get an unending supply of enemies. Which means that if you continue to be competitive and you fall into the habit and the trap and pattern of being competitive, you're enforcing the tendency to separate and to categorize people. And as you move through life doing that, what happens is you create enemies. You create people because you create a situation that separates you from others. Now, that I will address later about how it does not match the state or the level of what we wish to achieve, which is non-dual thinking. All right, because automatically when you are in a competition, you're already separating somebody else from you. You're already saying that person is not the same as you, and that person does not want the same things as you, or that person does not deserve what it is that you want. All right, which does not make sense, because when you sit down every single day and then you do your sadhana and then you pray for the welfare of all sentient beings, how can you pray for the welfare of all sentient beings if you've already created a group called the others in your mind? That those people who do not share the same views as you, or those people who do not share the same opinions as you, or the same values as you, are inferior or less deserving compared to you. All right. Competitiveness. Good morning, Kamala. Good morning, Hope Peng. Thank you for joining us this morning. Another consequence of competitiveness is that it reinforces jealousy and envy. All right. So they got that, I didn't. And it reinforces ego and pride. And I bring this up because I've been watching Top Chef recently. I've been watching some Top Chef videos recently. And very interesting what the competitors say. Some of the things that the competitors say. Things like, you got to feel like you're the best. Yes, I deserve to be here. Yes, I deserve to win. Or, I won. I'm the best. I'm better at you, my skill is so much better than yours. All right, so competition reinforces ego and pride. Competition also reinforces, or competitiveness also reinforces wishing the worst for others. So I'm hoping somebody else messed up so that I can win. All right, because you don't want someone else to succeed. You don't want someone else to do well. Competitiveness also reinforces emotional volatility, and it also reinforces moodiness. So you oscillate between the high of what a rush it was to win, followed by I'm so disappointed that I lost. Now, when you do this over and over again, over a period of time, and you're driven by competitiveness, what happens? The highs and lows of your moods become normalized. And so moodiness and emotional volatility become normalized. So do you know some people who just react and they fly off the handle and they suddenly flip out and you don't know why? Do you know some people who are very, very anxious or very, very kanchiong or very, very... they seem determined, but very, very intense about winning. And then when they don't, then they fly off the handle. All right, so competitiveness reinforces emotional volatility, it reinforces moodiness. And it normalizes these highs and lows in our mood. Now, what Rinpoche explained to us before is that highs and lows in our mood and highs and lows in our day-to-day lives, successes and failures, are normal. We will go through them in our lifetime. No one, except for those who are practiced, most of us are not steady in our moods. And it is normal in samsara for us to experience emotional volatility. But the whole point of our practice and the whole reason why we're practicing is that we're trying to achieve, we're trying to achieve an equilibrium so that if it's a win, we won. And if it's a loss, it's a loss. We don't bind our mood and we don't bind our emotion and we don't bind our feeling and how we behave around other people, how we interact with other people on whether we have won or whether we've lost. All right. There are some people that you see when they lose, they are deeply affected by it. Some people throw a tantrum, they throw things around, they stomp their feet. Some people get very, very depressed, very withdrawn because they cannot handle the fact that they lost. Some people react to loss by bad-mouthing the competitor, or or they'll say things like, oh, the judge was blind, they didn't see what they were doing, the referee or the umpire, it was blind and they made the wrong call, and so on. So some people are really, really bad losers. Why? Because they pin their entire mood and their entire reaction on whether they won or not. And so competitiveness, unhealthy competitiveness, reinforces that sense or that approach of emotional volatility and moodiness. All right. Competitiveness. Good morning, Amy. Good morning, Pin Pin Heng. And good morning, Jasmine. Thank you for joining us this morning. Another consequence of constant unhealthy competition or competitiveness is that it sets us up for loneliness. Who wants to be in a relationship or in a friendship with somebody who is constantly competitive? Who wants to talk to somebody who is always talking about their accomplishments and then putting yours down? Who wants to be in a marriage where the husband is constantly competing with the wife and the wife is constantly competing with the husband? Even if you are a pro athlete, you still need to take a break from being super competitive all the time, all right? Nobody likes to be in a relationship, nobody likes to be in a friendship with somebody who gloats. Nobody likes to be in a relationship or friendship with somebody who rubs in their victories or who puts other people down. So competitiveness, unhealthy competitiveness, can set us up for loneliness. All right. Now, the ultimate consequence of unhealthy competitiveness is that if we are constantly competitive and we're constantly competing against other people, ultimately it becomes a roadblock to our enlightenment. Not just for the reasons I explained previously about how it contradicts our prayer to pray for all sentient beings, because we are constantly creating enemies in our mind, at least, or we constantly perceive people to be enemies. But it becomes a roadblock to enlightenment because if you think about it logically, and how competition or competitiveness is at odds with achieving enlightenment, name me one Buddha who is competitive, Alright? So if you guys can think of one Buddha who is super competitive and one enlightened being who's super competitive, or one high Lama, one attained high Lama who is super competitive, I will give you a special prize. Alright? Buddhas are not in competition with each other. Alright? There's no such thing. A truly enlightened being does not possess any competitiveness in them. Alright? They don't try to outdo each other. You don't see like, Yamantaka saying, hey, I've got so many more arms than Vajrayogini. I'm better than Vajrayogini. Alright? You don't see, Amitabha, going to Tsongkhapa and saying, hey, I've got so many more practitioners than you. I'm doing better than you. Alright? So competition is not a quality that is present in Buddhas. Buddhas do not possess the quality of competitiveness. So that should already tell you something about whether competition or competitiveness has a place within the enlightened mind. Alright? Buddhas don't try to outdo each other. Buddhas don't try to get one up on another Buddha. They don't engage in one-upmanship. Buddhas don't get upset when you pray to one Buddha over another Buddha. And Buddhas don't refuse to help someone because they're not happy with them. Alright? So Buddhas don't gloat with one another. Yeah, hi Mark. Hi Waiki, thank you for joining us this morning. Yeah, so competitiveness and the characteristic quality of competitiveness is at odds with developing enlightenment, because the enlightened mind has no sense of competition. You don't see old practiced monks in the monastery going around saying, well, I've done so many more retreats than this other monk, therefore I'm better than them. You don't see old practiced monks in the monastery saying, well, I've got a Geshe degree, you don't. You don't see monks saying, well, my Dharma center is bigger than yours. Alright, that's the thing that Rinpoche always shared with us over and over again, was that Rinpoche has no sense of competitiveness at all. Rinpoche said that he finds it very interesting sometimes when he sees Dharma centers or when he sees Dharma teachers and so on try to compete with one another, or even social organizations, for example, different charities and all that, trying to compete with each other. Rinpoche said when Rinpoche sees somebody else doing it and they're succeeding, Rinpoche truly rejoices for them and Rinpoche feels happy. Why? Because their success means that somebody else is being helped. So what is the point of being competitive about it just because they are the ones doing it and you're not the one doing it? Rinpoche said he truly rejoices, and he doesn't get it why different organizations might be competitive with one another, because if somebody else is succeeding, good for them. They're putting in the hard work, good for them that they're succeeding. So you don't see people who truly understand the teachings and who truly practice the teachings have competitiveness in them. And you don't see the Buddhas competing with one another. Hey, why did Dorje Shukden get 8 bowls of water offerings and why did I only get 7? You don't see them saying that, alright? So how do you counter competitiveness? Because I've talked about how competitiveness arises from a sense of desire. At the desire to accomplish something, or the desire to possess or own something or develop something at the cost of or at the downfall of somebody else. Alright, I've talked about how competitiveness, the disbenefits of it and the consequences of it, and how it's at odds with our wish to achieve enlightenment. So given all of that, how do we counter competitiveness? And I have just shared with you guys one of the methods that Rinpoche taught us about how we can counter competitiveness, which is to rejoice. When you see other people winning and when you see other people doing well, feel happy for them. Feel happy that they're doing well and that they're succeeding, and really feel happy for them. Not begrudgingly like, oh yeah, I'm so happy for you. Okay, not sarcastically, but genuinely, I'm so happy that you're doing well. You're doing something that I could not possibly think to do. Make that your habit. Right? Recognize that on an ultimate level, there's no separation between them and you. Both of you want the same thing. Both of you want happiness. Both of you want success. And so if somebody else gets to succeed, what's wrong with that? The fact that somebody else succeeds and the fact that somebody else did well, the fact that somebody else won or developed something that you may not necessarily have developed, it's no reflection on you. It's no reflection on your ability. It's no reflection on who you are. It's no reflection on the type of person that you are. If you're kind, if you're generous, if you are compassionate, if you are forgiving, how is somebody else's success take away from those qualities about yourself? Alright, side effects of rejoicing. So many side effects. Number one, you counter jealousy, which I talked about in more detail a couple of weeks ago in a previous sharing. How we can counter jealousy by rejoicing. So I'll just briefly mention it here. Side effects of rejoicing: you counter jealousy, you gain a lot of merit, all right? And in the teachings, Rinpoche always shared with us in the teachings is that if you can't do an activity that benefits other people, even just by simply rejoicing in the fact that other people are doing good things, you yourself also get the same merit as them. All right. So the analogy that is often brought up is the analogy of a light bulb. When a light bulb blows, all it takes is for one person to change it. But once the light bulb is changed, everybody else gets to share in the benefit of having light and no longer being in the darkness. All right. So when you rejoice at someone else's success, when you rejoice in someone else's accomplishments and someone else's achievements, side benefit, you gain a lot of merit. You gain the same amount of merit for yourself as if you had done that act yourself. All right. A more prosaic, sort of straightforward result of rejoicing for other people is that people like you. You know, because you know how to be happy for somebody else. People don't like you. Just think about yourself, all right? Do you like being around someone who puts down when you do well, or tries to take away from your accomplishments? Do you like that sense of competition? Maybe once or twice you can put up with it, but over and over again, after a while, it becomes quite difficult for most people to tolerate. All right, so if you yourself can rejoice in somebody else's accomplishments and somebody else's success, the result is people like being around you, because people like being around other people who know how to be happy for someone else. All right, how else can you generate? How else can you counter competitiveness? Generate gratitude. If competition and if competitiveness results in you not being able to enjoy what it is that you have because you're constantly dissatisfied and you're constantly desiring something else, when you generate gratitude, that counters jealousy, and that helps us to be able to enjoy what it is that we already have. Maybe when you enjoy what it is that you have, you will realize that you don't need anything more or you don't need anything else. All right, so sometimes we get trapped in this cycle of thinking where we keep thinking, I don't have enough, I need more, I need more, I need more, I need more, I need more. And so what you do have, you don't appreciate, because you don't give yourself time to appreciate it. You don't give yourself time to feel grateful for it. And so when you stop and you think and you practice the generation of gratitude for what it is that you do have, let's say you don't get a project that you were pitching for in the office, right? Generate gratitude for what it is that you've already developed. Let's say, this is one that many people may be able to identify with. Let's say you're on a diet and you failed to meet your targeted weight loss or muscle gain for the week. But if you generate gratitude for what it is that you've already lost and what it is that you've already developed, it helps you to enjoy your progress that much more, as opposed to constantly feeling dissatisfied with your progress, all right? Because you have actually moved. How else can you counter competitiveness? Meditate on what you're being competitive for. Where will that sense of competitiveness bring you? What ultimate benefit does it have? What ultimate benefit does it have to be competitive? Could your time that you spent on being competitive and trying to beat somebody else be better spent elsewhere? Developing something that you can take with you into your next life, all right? So an example that Rinpoche taught us many years ago was the example of the Olympics. So Rinpoche said that he doesn't deny the physical prowess and the physical accomplishments of Olympic athletes who train since they're young, and they sacrifice so much in order to get to where they are, to get to the pinnacle of their sport, right? And to get to the apex of their chosen athletic discipline. And then prior to the Olympics, they train so hard for 4 years, they miss out on social events, they have to amend their diet, they have to really focus on that one goal. Sometimes they don't even make the team after putting in so much effort into it. Sometimes they don't even manage to raise the sponsorship that they need to go to the games. Sometimes they don't get the support that they want, and so on. And after all of that sacrifice, they don't even make the cut. And then on top of that, once they get to the Olympics, they may not even win. And so it's decades or years and years, and then 4 intense years of training for the Olympics. So Rinpoche said, like I said, Rinpoche said Rinpoche does not detract or is not trying to take away from their physical prowess, but all of us at some point will be on our deathbed. All of us at some point will be facing the moment of our passing. And so at that time, if you and I, if we know the Dharma, what is it at that point that we want to look back on? Do we want to look back on the 20, 30 years that we spent training for one particular event? Or do we want to look at the 20, 30 years that we spent engaging in meditations and engaging in retreats and engaging in practice and volunteering and serving our Lama and all of that, and be able to develop the qualities that we can take with us when we move on to our next life? Because all of us are going to pass. All of us are going to die. And so how prepared are we, and how much time and how much effort have we invested into that moment that all of us are going to have to face? So then the question is, when you want to counter competitiveness, meditate on what you're being competitive for. Are you being competitive for something that will benefit you ultimately? Or are you being competitive for something that is a very short-term gain, something that you will not be able to carry on with you into your next life? All right, so is the result beneficial to others? Is the result beneficial to myself on a conventional level, or is it beneficial to others and to myself on an ultimate level? All right, how else can you counter competitiveness? Is by separating competitiveness from ambition and drive. There's nothing wrong with wanting success, all right? There's nothing wrong with wanting to improve. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be the best. But when we tie our so-called self-worth and we tie our identity to it, that's when it becomes problematic. Because the truth of the matter is that you're not always going to win. You're not always going to be the best. You're not always going to do well. If you are an athlete and your entire identity is tied around your sport and tied around winning, at some point our bodies will break down. At some point our minds will slow. At some point our bodies will slow. And so if you tie your entire identity into that one particular aspect of your life, it becomes problematic when you're no longer able to engage in the same activities to accomplish the same results that you once were able to. All right. So another way of hi, good morning, Iman. Another way of countering competitiveness. So far I've talked about the importance of rejoicing. So far I've talked about generating gratitude. So far I've talked about meditating on what it is that we're being competitive for, and whether it has a conventional short-term benefit or it has an ultimate benefit. Talked about separating competitiveness from ambition and drive. Another way of countering competitiveness is by meditating on compassion. So earlier, when I talked about how competitiveness reinforces ego and pride, it reinforces wishing the worst in other people. So I hope that person messed up so that I can win. All right? Meditating on compassion counters that. Because when you meditate on compassion, you're thinking, is it kind for me to wish the worst in others? Is it kind of me to wish failure on other people? Is it kind of me to wish disappointment on other people? How does me wishing someone else's failure or someone else to do badly, how does it match up against my prayers? How does it match up against me accepting the defeat and offering the victory to others? So if you recite the 8 verses of thought transformation every single day, how does my action on a day-to-day basis, when I'm at work, when I'm at home, when I'm dealing with my children, when I'm dealing with a colleague, when I'm dealing with another business and so on, how do my actions in those moments match up with accepting the defeat and offering the victory to others? So meditating on compassion is a powerful way of countering competitiveness, because when you meditate on compassion, you want other people to do well. You want other people to win. You want other people to succeed. You want other people to be happy and to accomplish and to be happy about their accomplishments and to achieve things. Instead of thinking, I wish that they lose, I wish that they messed up, I wish that they don't do well because I want to win. All right? Countering competitiveness also comes about when we are not attached to a result. So don't be attached to a result. If emotional volatility arises from attachment to a particular outcome or result, so I tried so hard, therefore I'm going to win. If emotional volatility arises from attachment, logically speaking, if you learn not to be attached to a particular result or a particular outcome, then it helps you to have or to engage in something with ambition and drive without feeling the highs and lows of failure and success. All right. So if you lost, you lost. If you look at old monks in the monastery, I mean, if you are fortunate enough to spend any time with them, what Rinpoche always told us is, you never get any sense of competition from them. If they see another Lama, like doing very well, and they see another Lama with plenty of students, and they see another Lama doing a lot of Dharma work and benefiting a lot of people, you never see the old monk saying, well, I deserve that. You never see the old monk saying, oh, I'm so depressed that I wasn't able to do that. You don't see the old monk saying, well, why does he get to do it? How come I don't get to do it? All right. You just see the old monks folding their hands saying, oh, I'm so happy that he's able to benefit so many sentient beings. And then that's it. All right. Speaking of the monastery, one way of countering competitiveness. Oh, good morning, Kok Lian. So speaking of the monastery and speaking of old monks, one way of countering competitiveness is something that Rinpoche shared with us before, and that is not to focus on being right and not to focus on winning, but to focus on benefiting other people. So if you're doing something with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of drive and a lot of ambition, how you can counter the sense of competitiveness is by focusing on the fact that you're doing it to benefit other people, not because you want to win, not because you want to be right, and not because you want some form of self-gratification out of it, all right? So Rinpoche said that one method that the monastery uses to teach people how to focus on not being right, to teach people how to not focus on winning, is monastic debate. So Rinpoche said that the most effective debaters in the monastery are not people who want to be right or who want to win and who want to win the debate. But the point of being in a monastic debate is to learn how to put down our ego and to actually learn. So it's not a competition. They're not trying to be the best. They are trying to gain as much knowledge as possible in order to be of benefit to others. All right? They're trying to understand the teachings as much as possible in order to be able to have knowledge and the tools and the equipment to help other people. So when we did debates with Rinpoche, that was something that Rinpoche always reminded us on. Rinpoche would set us up in 2 lines, and then Rinpoche would walk up and down in the middle and then debate with us one by one. And it was very, very fast. And as soon as Rinpoche asks the question, I mean, you guys know from Rinpoche's teachings how rapidly Rinpoche spoke. So Rinpoche asks a question and immediately you need to come up with the answer. No hesitation, no and, is, or buts. And Rinpoche would talk in such a way or ask the question in such a way that could be answered from different angles. And so if you were not clear on your answer, you were not clear on your knowledge, you wouldn't be able to answer it and you would hesitate. Now, the thing that Rinpoche always taught us was that when you're in that situation, if you're so focused on winning and you're so focused on being right, you're not going to be able to come up with the answer, or you're not going to be able to think clearly. All right, so Rinpoche would train us in pacifying our need to be competitive and our need to win, and focus on the question, focus on learning, focus on gaining new information, new knowledge, so that we can amend what it is that we know, we can amend our body of knowledge so that we can be of greater benefit to others. All right, so don't focus on being right, don't focus on winning, but focus on benefiting others. And when you keep focusing on that, then over time your sense of competitiveness will naturally reduce as well. Now, finally, the other thing that I want to say, good morning, Eunice. Good morning. Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for the notebook that you sent. Oh, thank you so much. I got it like a few days ago. I had no idea who it came from. So I thought that, like I ordered something online and I completely forgot about it. And then I got your email. So thank you so much for your gift. I've put it on my altar and I've offered it up to the Buddhas, to the 3 jewels, dedicated the merit to you and for your spiritual progress. All right, so thank you so much for your gift. It was very, very sweet and very thoughtful of you. Final thing that I want to share today, before I go, about how we can effectively counter our sense of competitiveness, is by doing our prayers and pujas every day. And I know I say this every single week, but that's the thing, I'm going to keep saying it until we're all enlightened, all right? Because it is, we don't think about it, and we don't truly understand just how much doing our prayers and our pujas every single day and doing them properly, what kind of impact it has on us and what kind of impact it has on our spiritual practice. Competition, we sit there and we do our prayers and then we recite and we're like, okay, we're done with our sadhana and then that's it. And I can go watch TV now, all right? But we don't realize the indirect impact it has on our thinking, because competition is one of the types of dualistic thinking that we are trying to overcome in our daily prayers, all right? And just as, I guess, evidence of it, there are even entire verses in the Lama Tripa that talk about or that refer to the dangers of a competitive us versus them approach and teaches us how to counter it. And so these verses are verse 90 to 94. I found them for you, so I'm going to read them out. So earlier, I spoke about how if we're always being competitive, we reinforce the sense of us versus them, and we inadvertently keep creating enemies, because we need to create an enemy in order to have someone or an object or a target to compete against. And so when we do our daily prayers and we do our daily sadhana, or when we recite prayers such as Lama Chopa and we really meditate on them, you will see how just by reciting these prayers, we plant the seeds in our mind stream to counter and to reduce the sense of competitiveness that we have. So for example, in verse 90, there is no difference between ourselves and others. None of us wishes even the slightest of sufferings, nor is even content with the happiness we have. Realizing this, we seek your blessings that we may enhance the bliss and joy of others. This chronic disease of cherishing ourselves is the cause giving rise to our unsought suffering. Perceiving this, we seek your blessings to blame, begrudge, and destroy the monstrous demon of selfishness. The mind that cherishes all mother beings and would secure them in bliss is the gateway leading to infinite virtue. Seeing this, we seek your blessings to cherish these beings more than our lives, even should they rise up as our enemies. In brief, infantile beings labor only for their own end, while Buddhas work solely for the welfare of others. With the mind understanding the distinctions between the failings of one and the advantages of the other, we seek your blessings to enable us to equalize and exchange ourselves for others. Since cherishing ourselves is the doorway to all torment, while cherishing our mothers is the foundation of all that is good, we seek your blessings to make our core practice the yoga of exchange of self for others. Right? So verse 90 to 94, if you look at it, can also be interpreted as us getting rid of our thinking of an us versus them, that other beings are separate from us, and so other beings are inferior, and therefore other beings are not worthy, not deserving of success, and only we are deserving of success. All right, if you also think about the 8 verses of thought transformation, again, accepting the defeat and offering the victory to others. When you do your daily prayers and you pray for the welfare of all sentient beings, meditate on the meaning of the verses. All right, don't just rush through your prayers, don't just rush through your sadhanas and recite as quickly as possible, because that's what you see the monks doing, that's what you see other people doing. All right, try not to rush through them, just to finish them, just so that you can check it off on your to-do list for the day that I've done my daily sadhana. All right, why is it that we can take so much time to sit down and to prepare our table and to have a nice meal and to chop all of our vegetables very precisely and to prepare everything, to light candles and all of that, and going through so much effort and so much time just to have a meal? And then when we're doing our sadhana, we recite Sakim as quickly as possible and rush through our Sakim. We recite the Toma offering as quickly as possible just to get the Toma offering over and done with, just so that we can say, I finished my sadhana. Alright, so what I want to say is that when you do your daily prayers and when you do your daily sadhana, really take the time to meditate on the meaning of them. Not just because they are nice prayers that some Lama hundreds of years ago composed and recited, and therefore you have faith and they will benefit you. Yes, they will. But you're intelligent, you're educated, alright, so take the time to meditate and to understand the meaning of the prayers that you're reciting and to get more benefit out of it. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it well, right? Might as well get as much benefit out of it as possible, right? So take your time. Rinpoche always told us, take your time with your meditations, take your time with your visualizations. Really meditate, really visualize that your friends and family are behind you, that your people that you perceive to be enemies are in front of you and so on. Really sit there and visualize it. Why? Because it's easy. It's very easy to pray for the people that you love. It's very easy to pray for the people who agree with you. It's very easy to pray for for the people who don't rock your boat, who don't challenge your views. It's very easy to pray for the people who don't annoy you. It's much, 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 much harder to pray for people who irritate you, who annoy you, who anger you, who frustrate you, that you have to tolerate. It's much harder to pray for people like that. But when you sit and you take the time to meditate and to include them in your prayers, already you're taking the first steps to removing the view that you are separate to somebody else and therefore you are deserving of a win and they are not. All right. How can we say that we have developed compassion if we still have preferences? How can we say that we have developed compassion when we still hold the view that one group is desirable and more deserving of winning and another group is not? All right. And therefore we should be in competition with them. Hence, competition is at odds with us actually trying to develop compassion. All right. Now, you may be thinking, well, Pastor Jinai, you're a pastor, so you have plenty of time to do your prayers. I have bills to pay. I have a family. I have mouth to feed. I've got to send my kids to school. I've got to take them to tuition. I've got to take them to football practice. I've got to take them to piano practice. I've got to take them to violin lessons or whatever. So I don't have time to do my sadhana. You do. Have you heard of Saturdays and Sundays? All right. So if you can't do full extended every single day, start with one day. All right. For that one day in the weekend, take your time. Take your time to do extensive offerings. Take your time to focus on your practice. Take your time to focus on your prayers. Maybe for the other 6 days of the week, you're rushing through your mantras and rushing through your chanting. But for that one day in that week, be kind to yourself. Be kind to the people that you love. And put a little bit more effort into your practice for that day. And then maybe after some time, that one day becomes 2 days. That one day becomes 3 days and so on, until it becomes every single day. But take some time out. Think about what it is that you value. Do you value going to a movie that then finishes after 3 hours and then that's it? Or do you value putting the same amount of time into doing your offerings properly, cleaning your altar, making sure that your offerings are extensive as possible? You know, people always talk about how they want to do retreat. Oh, I wish I had time to do retreat. What is there to stop you from doing for example, a one-day retreat on the weekend? Nothing. All right. So maybe try, if you perceive yourself to be extremely busy throughout the week, try for that one day in a weekend to really sit down and engage with your practice and try to understand your practice and put some effort and into the visualizations, into the meditations, and to understanding what it is that you're actually praying for and the meaning behind the prayers that you're doing. All right. So that is me for this week. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment in the, I see a question here from Mark. Yeah, competition on the bike of yours. I work better with numbers. That's it. Yeah, I like hitting numbers. Someone's asked me before, what are you going to do in the future when you don't have time to ride? I'll sell my bike. Like, that's it. So keep in mind, if anyone wants a bike, I'm putting it out there right now that when the bike is up for sale, my bike will be available. All right. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, if anything was expressed in an unclear manner, or you need more clarification, or if you have a question that's completely unrelated to what it is I talked about, like, Pastor Gina, why do you wear white? Why do monks eat after 12 o'clock? Can monks eat meat? And so on. Please feel free to ask me a question. Leave me a comment in the live stream. All right, before I go, I want to ask you guys, remind you to reflect on the past week. If at any point you have engaged in something that was slightly less than virtuous and made you a little uncomfortable in the course of being competitive with somebody else, at some point, did you let your competitiveness get the better of you and get the better of somebody else? And did you let your competitiveness override your wish to engage in Dharma practice in every single moment of your life? All right, so think as you move into this week as well. When you face a situation where you have an opportunity to be competitive? Is it possible for you to engage in that situation with ambition and drive without clinging to a particular outcome and without desire to win or to accomplish or to achieve something at the cost or at the downfall of somebody else? All right. So, quick reminders, upcoming programs for this week, for today. Today on the Chinese Kechara Facebook fan page, there will be the Dojo Shukden Sadhana at 10 p.m. with Pastor Shin. And then on Tuesday at 9:30 p.m, there will be Easy Dharma for the New Normal with Pastor David. And then on Thursday at 8 p.m, we will have the 7 Rinpoche Swift Return Puja being live streamed on the Kecharans and Friends Facebook group. And then on the same night, JP will be back with his paranormal sharing on Thursday night. We took a break last week because of the preparations for the Parinirvana ceremony. All right, so thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you have any requests for offerings to be made or prayers to be made, please leave me a comment at the bottom of this live stream. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment as well. All right, don't forget to do your dedications from wherever you are. And once again, thank you guys so much for everyone who contributed in time, effort, even funds to the Parinirvana ceremony and the event and the prayers that we had to commemorate the 1 year anniversary of the passing of our Guru, His Eminence Kabaji Sem Trungku Rinpoche. Work will start again soon on the outdoor stupa, on the Tugu Draba Gyaltsen stupa, and on the 25 incarnation statues, and on the chapel. Alright, so do keep your eyes peeled for more opportunities to volunteer and to get involved. Alright, because I don't know about you guys, but I had a lot of fun. Alright, I mean, all jokes aside, I'm pretty introverted. Although appearances may belie that fact, but I'm pretty introverted. But still, I really enjoyed myself over these last few days, seeing so many Kecharans and seeing so many of Rinpoche students come together to really celebrate and commemorate and make it possible for everything that happened to really honor our Guru's life in the best way that we know how. All right, so it's so nice to witness so many people's faith and so many people's love for Rinpoche. So yeah, thank you guys again so much for everything that you've done in the last week and for joining me today. I'm sure that you must be very, very tired after all of the activities of the last week. All right, and thank you again to the sponsors of today's sharing. And if you wish to sponsor a talk, again, link is in the description section of this video. All right, have a great week, and I'll see you guys here, same time, same place next week, again with an as yet undecided topic. So bye guys.